From the campus of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, this is Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. My name is Brian Perez, and we are here live on this Wednesday, the 14th of August, 2024. Phone lines are now open. 888-564-6173 is the number. 888-564-6173. You can also send in your questions on Facebook Messenger or by filling out the form on the Pastor's Perspective page of our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. But the best way to get an answer is to call us when we're here live, like today, till 4 p.m. at 888-564-6173. And answering your questions today, we've got author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway, the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's joining us online. Here in the studio with me is Professor Ed Stetzer, the Dean of the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. How you doing, guys?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
It's good to see Bobby in that fabulous hair. We really need a screenshot of that. Do you see his hair today?
Yes.
I don't know why I feel the need to comment on that, but Bobby, I just don't. Is that on purpose?
We do it on purpose so that more people will watch us on Facebook and YouTube.
I need people to go to Facebook and see this right now.
Yes. Yes. It's great.
How are you doing, Bobby?
Man, I'm doing so good, bud. I'm doing really good. I enjoyed being in studio with you last week, bro.
It was fun to see you, man. It was fun to see you, even though I didn't have a car, which was weird, but I'm taxiing and Ubering around. But it was good to see you as well. Always fun and good to be here in studio. Where's Broderson? Did we talk about where Broderson is on days he's gone?
He is traveling currently. He's overseas.
Some exotic location. It's Europe, what I saw.
It is Europe,
yeah. Somewhere in there. You're doing Calvary Chapel, Calvary Global Network stuff, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay.
No, he might be on a vacation.
I don't know. He's tweeting with people. Like, he seemed to be with ministry people, so...
Well, the funniest thing is he sent me a photo this morning. He texted me a photo this morning of something he saw wherever he is, and it is it's Coca-Cola, but it is, if you can see it up here.
Yeah, Coca-Cola.
It says K-Wave on it.
K-Wave Coca-Cola?
K-Wave Coca-Cola.
That's so funny. I see a lawsuit coming. K-Wave Coca-Cola. I'm looking this up.
K-Wave is our flagship radio station in Southern California.
It is. It's literally, and it's got the same, it's K-Wave.
Yes, which we don't use the dash as much anymore. Okay. But all of our branding and everything doesn't have the dash. But,
I wonder, of course, you probably aren't going to win a fight with Coca-Cola about your branding anyway. I guess. My guess is it mean Korea?
Could be.
Like the wave of K-pop and K-dramas?
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't think Brian is in...
He's not in Korea.
Korea. He's definitely not North Korea.
Yeah, that's true. No, because I was just there in Korea, and I'm telling you, it is Korean. You can see down at the bottom there's some Korean language on the can. It's amazing. Like, being in Korea, and it's like they're living in the future, man. The technology, I know this is random. So I get in an elevator, and you got to scan your key sometimes to press the button. Okay. So I scan my key so I can press the button, but the button lights up because the elevator knows where I'm going, so I don't have to press the button.
Whoa.
Like everything, they're like 5 years ahead of us technologically. And Seoul, Korea, super safe, so different than sometimes the challenges in American cities. So it's some lessons to learn from our Korean friends. The K-Wave. The K-Wave from Korea.
Yes,
this could be. We could tell people that we are now a Korean radio station.
That's right.
So
we're big in Korea.
We're big in Korea.
Yes. All right.
Not North Korea.
No. They hate us there.
That's the truth. Yeah.
888-564-6173 is our number, isn't it, Ed Stetzer?
It is indeed. 888-564-6173. I love giving the number, and we love when you are calling in and asking questions. Again, call us now, 888-564-6173. Brian Broderson's not here. When the cat's away, Bobby, Ed, and Brian will play.
Don't you know it? But before we get to any of the questions, either phone calls or Facebook, whatever, how are things at Biola? Biola.edu.
Biola.edu. Edu. You love saying
yes, I do. I do.
It's going really well. Like, we were just looking at our incoming class. We're going to have a significant, just a continuing growing class. And I was super encouraged that the Talbot School of Theology. Now, remember, Biola is the university, and then there are a bunch of schools. So, for example, the Snyder School of Cinema Media Arts, which, do you know where the name Snyder comes from?
Is it the In-N-Out
It's the In-N-Out Snyder.
Wow.
Right. So they gave an historic gift to Biola University. So we're doing groundbreaking this fall. well on our cinema and media arts building. I think it was Variety Magazine listed us as one of the top 20 film schools, not Christian film schools. We're the only Christian school on there. So we love getting in and impacting Hollywood through that. So
that's cool.
But the Talbot School of Theology, we're up 6 point something % year over year in growth, which is great. So it's really encouraging time. One of the things that, our listeners, might be people considering college. I'm always interested with the 10-year-olds call. We get more calls from kids here. But parents and students, potential students who might be listening, to see their confidence in Biola University, trusting, again, you start the program off with the most comprehensive Christian university. And that's not something we just claim. That's from a study done by a professor, not at Biola University, but at a university in Texas, who said that when we look at across our policies and the way we do things, we have, and actually the higher than anybody else is our alignment with our policies and our Christian commitment. So it's going really well, and I'm glad to be here. It's about a year ago I moved here, and so
has it been a year?
It's been a year.
Wow.
Yep. So it's been a joy to be here and to see what the Lord's doing at Biola. So we'd love to connect with folks who are interested in going. It's probably too late for this fall, but it's not too late for next fall.
That's right.
There you go.
And even for online classes, is it?
Oh yeah, gosh, we have an online bachelor's degree. We have online seminary degrees. Everyone has online now, and what we try to do is to do online in such a way that it's not just you churning out a degree with some graduate student who's never taught before. So we like to do a really higher quality experience as well. We need to get Bobby teaching for us. I don't know why Bobby's not already.
Oh, Bobby.
Hey, you know what, Ed? That's so funny you say that, because I was actually thinking about reaching out, because
it's confirmation.
I would love that, and I connect really good with students when I teach and stuff, and just being a pastor. I'm practical, but if you have any courses that
I believe that
on,
right now
amazing.
We have made a connection right now,
think so.
like live on the air, like Bobby is ready. Now, Bobby, because you went to one of them fancy British schools, like you're one of the smart, you got a PhD from one of them fancy, they didn't teach you how to brush your hair, but you got a PhD from one of them fancy schools.
Let's do a Bobby Conway job interview right now. Ed Stetzer, go ahead.
Yeah, Bobby, let's talk about, you were very committed to theological standards at Biola University Talbot School of Theology. So we'll have to see. Do you hold? Are you an inerrantist? You hold the inerrancy of the Bible?
Yep.
Okay, I could go through all these. This is probably boring to everybody else, but we do take it seriously.
Are you pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib? Does that make a difference at Biola?
The millennial would make a difference. Your view of the millennium would make a difference. We have some diversity of opinions on the pre-tribulational question.
Okay.
I just did. I have a podcast which I'm sure you listen to every week, but I just did a podcast with Max Lucado, and he wrote a book on the end times. Like you don't think of Max Lucado. On writing a book on the end times, you think of like another pastor from San Antonio doing that. But he changed his mind, and now he's premillennial, which is the correct view. Bobby, is that the correct view, premillennial?
It is. Yeah. Hey, if you guys, Sean McDowell would be. We're very similar in our.
You are not far from the kingdom, brother. You're not
theology
far from the
and all that. And you guys got Sean there. So.
Yeah, Sean's great. We love Sean's just one of our amazing apologics professors.
I think Bobby just said, if you have Sean there, you can have me there.
It was pretty much what he said.
Yeah,
it's like
that's
like
right. You can have my buddy Sean there. He'll vouch.
if you have the standards of it, but again, like in some cases, like a lot of Christian schools are this way too. We have Presbyterians. We have Pentecostals, we have Baptists, we have non-denominational people. But there are, one of the things that I think makes Biola unique is his deep commitment to its theological integrity. And I think Bobby and I we had a little short interview, but I love how he ended the interview. If you got Sean, you can have me. So that was awesome.
2 for 1.
2 for 1.
Now, I will say, just as a side note, it's always nice when your mom's watching and she just texts me and I see it click and she says, "What the heck did you do to your hair?"
Did she really? Your mom just, this is such a win. Like literally, Mom, I love your mom. This is the most amazing thing. And I'm going to I need to screenshot the Facebook page, and I'm going to, after the show, I'm going to put it up and say, this is the truth. So, because now, and let me just say, if you
say this is the future of Biola University.
This is the future of Biola University. No. If he's going to teach for us, he's got to get a comb. That's the rule, or a hairbrush or something.
That's a deal.
All right, done. Done.
888-564-6173 is the number to call us today. So grab an open line, and we will begin with a question that was sent in online. This is from John. A lot of killing happened in the Old Testament, especially when the Israelites were coming into the Promised Land. How do we as Christians explain to someone that this doesn't mean that God is an evil, murdering God, but one who brought judgment on those nations? I find it a little difficult to wrap my head around this one. What do you say, Bobby?
It is tough when you read some of those passages. I think you got to really understand the context that it's written in order to appreciate what's going on. So, for example, when you realize that before the Canaanite conquest, there was 430 years that God had patiently waited. And then when judgment comes, keep in mind that as Joshua's walking around, each day, those were moments and opportunities for them to ditch town, to leave. And they stayed still. And then there were even 7 laps on the final day before the trumpets were blown. And then for the one that wanted to be freed, Rahab, her and her family did experience that. And so I think that we always got to realize that the judge of the earth will do what is right, like God told, like Abraham said, with God will not the judge of the earth do what is right. We know that God is gracious, that judgment is, the last resort. He's patient. Even with Sodom, we see how he was willing to spare, all of Sodom for the sake of just a few righteous people, which weren't in the city. And so when it comes to things like the flood or the Canaanite conquest, or what took place in Egypt with the plagues, we have to realize that hearts grew hard, that they rebelled. And, one of the things that you see, even with the prophets, is the prophets precede judgment. They announce judgment is coming. And then when people remain hard or in unbelief, then judgment comes. And so because God is holy, it requires him to act justly and to bring things account. And so we understand justice in our own world, but it doesn't always fit well when we see it with God. Now, it's not murder on God's behalf, but you do see God having the ability for capital punishment on people that walk in continuous rebellion. And it's for purging effect. It's to create a new climate. So we have to also understand, if you lived under the Canaanite regime back in the day, you would be welcoming judgment. So we need to give God the benefit of the doubt and realize that these people were really bad off, sacrificing their children. Imagine living under just brutality and evil, and then finally God intervenes and does something. So I'll say this lastly, people weren't complaining as God's people about God judging. If anything, they were struggling with why not sooner. And so when it came, it was a welcome relief.
Ed Stetzer.
Yeah, I think Bobby, when you pointed at me and asked, do I want to add more, Bobby kept going. So he covered almost everything. I think to acknowledge the evil of the Canaanites and the Canaanite conquest, sometimes called the Canaanite genocide, is important. I also think that it might help us theologically to acknowledge that all of us sinners are guilty and thus are responsible for our sin. The sin that has separated us from God makes us guilty and ultimately facing sin, death, hell, and the grave. And so God in his goodness showed mercy on his people, but he also judged others. But I would say too, I would just say too, I want her. Well, I don't know if it was he or she, but I do just John. I just want to say to you that I too struggle with the severity of that, and I think that's an okay thing to struggle with. Christians, there are whole books written on this, and there's good books you might want to read on this as well. I think Gavin Ortland had a video recently where he talked some about this that maybe we can drop in the Facebook page if you look up Gavin Ortland Canaanite genocide. But at the end of the day, it's good to struggle with it. But here, I trust the Lord in his yeah, that's it right there. Canaanite genocide or just. I do trust the Lord that his judgment is right and good. That I think people don't realize just how evil, as Bobby was talking about, like with child sacrifice and more. But that video will go into more as well. But it's good to wrestle with. But I choose to trust that God is just, right, and good. And these will make some of these things that don't make sense now will make more sense in eternity.
And you can find that video on YouTube. There's a channel called Truth Unites, and you could look for it there, or just do what I did. Just do a search for Gavin
Do
Ortland.
we drop it in like the Facebook page?
We
on
can,
our show?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. By the way, you can call us. Can I do it again?
Of course.
I saw some people calling, so that's good. 888. I'm going to say it slow because I want people to call. It's important to Bobby emotionally. I mean, Bobby's
Yes, it
mom's watching, so we need people to call and ask Bobby questions that his mom approves of.
Yes.
888-564-6173. Again, 888-564-6173. And I do think Patsy's call may even align with that as well.
Then let's go right to Patsy, calling us from San Marcos, California. What's up, Patsy?
That was quick.
Well, it's just your question seemed to, we have a screener, and Patsy is told a little bit where her question was, but it did seem to fit the theme of, how do we understand God's goodness and justice? But go right ahead, Patsy.
It does. I mean, you guys are talking about biblical times, Old Testament, but much of these things are a different scenario. But I was divorced after 37 years, and I knew my ex-husband had troubles, but I stood by. And yet, not finally, that's a horrible word, we divorced, and it appears that he is just great. He has money, he's wealthy. I went through cancer, and he sued me in the process.
Wow.
And, oh my gosh, the judge hated me. And he got everything he asked for. I guess my question is, I know we're not supposed to ask why, but why?
Well, I'm not sure, and Patsy, thank you for your call. I'm not sure we're not supposed to ask why.
That's right.
But Bobby, why don't you weigh in first, and then I'll share a little.
Well, and I agree with you, Ed. I think that asking why, is very normal. I mean, obviously, Job gets a little bit of a kickback from God, like, where were you when I formed the earth and all that? But in general, that's what you see the heartbeat of people crying out, the psalmist or Habakkuk. Different people were longing to understand. And so just wanting some perspective to understand God's ways, that can help deepen our faith. But we don't always get the answer, and we don't always know why things happen. I mean, the Bible, indicates that, even reading the book of Ecclesiastes, you can just see that sometimes it just seems like, favor happens to the unrighteous, and then those that walk in righteousness, it doesn't seem like it always is a return there. And so I guess all that to say, what God asks of us is faithfulness. And the way that our circumstances shake out in a life of faithfulness, it's hard to tell. I mean, one person gets disease, another person doesn't. One person gets financially prosperous, another person goes bankrupt. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's because there's anything wrong with the person. It could be that somebody was spending foolishly or something. But I think just in this broken world, there's no predictability and guarantee for how things are going to work out this side of heaven.
Yeah, and I think, and again, to use your the why question as well. I mean, why did the wicked prosper is a pretty regular question or variants of that in the Psalms and elsewhere. And so, in Jeremiah, it says, why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all the faithless live at ease? This is Jeremiah chapter 12. Of course, Job struggled with it, and as Bobby rightly pointed out, God said, you got to trust me in this. Because I think the Lord, one of the things, Patsy, is the Lord doesn't give us answers on some things. I really realized this. I came to Christ in a tradition that kind of taught that, I don't know, you become a Christian and your problems all go away. And I don't think they intentionally thought that, but that's the message maybe teenage Ed picked up. And then my sister got a rare form of cancer. And we prayed. We had hundreds of people praying, then thousands of people praying. We believed God for miraculous healing. And she was 20 years old. She actually got cancer when she was 12, and it came back at 20. And she didn't live long, less than a year from when she was diagnosed the second time. And I got to tell you, I didn't have, and then, I was 20 years old myself. She was a year older than me. And I, after she died, I was there when she died, and then I went over to the beach. We lived in Florida at the time. And I cried out, "Why, God?" And I eventually had this peace that, God doesn't promise us the answers, but he promises us himself. And so I had to come back to verses like Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. So what I would say is it's the world still is broken. And, of course, we don't know about your situation or circumstances, but it sounds like it's been a hard row to hoe. And so I want to say to you that I grieve with you, and I'm sorry with you. And part of the reason is, as a pastor, I've sat down with a lot of people who were disappointed with God. And there's actually a book called Disappointment with God. And in the midst of that, they still trusted the Lord. And maybe that's, when things are going great, it's, and that's a book by Philip Yancey, by the way. It might be a helpful book for you, Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey. It's very, I think it was the Christianity Today Book of the Year. And I've felt disappointment with God. I don't understand why he does these things or why he didn't intervene in that situation of my daughter, my sister, or even struggles I've had raising my own daughters. So, but again, this comes back to, is there enough that I've seen in God's goodness? And the answer is yes. I've seen the goodness of God. And I know that a lot of these questions still remain, and those will probably remain until eternity. And then we'll see things, faith becomes sight, and we'll see things clearly.
Bobby Conway.
Yeah, such good words, Ed. I think that all of us can relate to struggles and suffering. None of us can understand each other's suffering perfectly, but we all know what it's like to feel the effects of this world being painful. And I can't imagine how hard that would be. I would say, sure, you feel like, this marriage doesn't work. He goes on, he's successful, and you're just kind of left with a bunch of cleanup. And so I think that it would be easy to think the way that you're thinking. I could see how you could fall into that thinking. But God's not finished with you. And it doesn't mean just because your husband has some of these things and it seems like he went on, it doesn't mean that there's not other consequences that are happening in his life, or it doesn't mean that God's not trying him in other ways. But at the end of the day, you just want to focus on your own walk and your own relationship. And you don't want anything that is going to cause you to question God's goodness in your life and his plan in your life. The Bible says suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. And if you think about that, I love the way that it's even, chained together. Suffering, when you persevere, right? So we suffer, we persevere. And then as we persevere, then that produces character. And then, as we start seeing character, that gives us hope. And there's nothing that gives us character, I think, better than the thing we hate the most, and that is through suffering. But the thing that we need the most, and for heaven, in the sense of and for life to make a big difference, is character. Now we're going to have, obviously God's righteousness has been applied to us, but it's that character that makes a big difference. And so we don't always appreciate what character can mean as a result of suffering. And I would say sometimes we overestimate what wealth and prosperity is as a form of blessing on our life. God's interested in our character first and foremost.
Patsy, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We are here until 4 p.m. Pacific time to answer your questions. Bobby Conway and Ed Stetzer are the guys answering your questions at 888-564-6173. To Fontana we go. Here is Chris with a question about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, I had a question about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I hear about it so much online, and I want to know what it was.
What are the Dead Sea Scrolls? Ed Stetzer.
Okay, so
I think your mic is off.
Sorry, I was coughing a minute ago. So, all right. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are, they're scrolls from the Dead Sea. Thank you. Next question. So, so the Dead Sea Scrolls are actually a series of, and it's okay. I got to tell you a little story to get there. I got to get a little background on this about Dead Sea Scrolls because ask me where I was this weekend. Go ahead and ask me where I was this weekend.
Ed Stetzer, where were you this weekend?
It's funny you should ask. So I was in Washington, D.C., and I was preaching for a friend at First Baptist Glen Arden. It's a wonderful, I guess it's the largest African-American church in D.C. Just so many wonderful, faithful churches in the African-American context, and it was a beautiful Sunday. But ask me where I stayed. Just ask me that, too.
So, Ed, where did you stay this weekend?
I stayed...
The White House.
No.
The Lincoln bedroom.
Yeah, the Lincoln bedroom. No. I was actually after hours at the Museum of the Bible. So when it's closed down, I was in the Museum of the Bible.
Did you get locked in? How did it?
So no. It's part of a thing. So
Okay.
so if people follow me on social media at Ed Stetzer, they can see my posts from the Museum of the Bible. So I got to see some of the Museum of the Bible stuff. So so part of that is talking about some of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, so a couple of things. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in basically, and I mean, there's a whole weird story about this. This rock was thrown and went into this little hole, and they get down there, and there was an ancient Jewish community that stored the biblical text, the Hebrew Scriptures, we'd call the Old Testament, in jars, and the reason Dead Sea is interests people. The reason that matters, it's geographically near there, but it's also super dry. So these scrolls, think of terms of rolled up paper. It's not quite paper, but rolled up. They were preserved. So we were able to sort of take them out and study them. And a couple of things really happened. So they contain portions of almost every book of the Hebrew Bible, which is fascinating, with the exception of, I bet Bobby knows, with the exception of Esther. It's not there. And including a complete scroll of Isaiah. So now why does this matter? Because this goes back a very, very long time. So we can compare the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are, a couple thousand years old, with our Bible today. And did we mistranslate it? Did it change over time? And they actually show just how specific and accurate the Jewish scribes were with kind of writing, over and preserving the text as well. And so it really, I think so for a lot of people, the reason I talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls is it wasn't like new stuff was found there. Every once in a while you read, somebody finds the Epistle of Barnabas or the secret, Gospel of Peter. And those are almost always just not things that are helpful. I mean, there are some documents with names like that, like the Gospel of Thomas that aren't biblical, but they date early, but they have different things in them. But the Dead Sea Scroll really helped a lot of Christians and actually Jewish people as well to say that there's some real overall accuracy and reliability that the text of the Old Testament has been transmitted and preserved accurately over time. And I think that's part of why people still see that as significant. But again, it didn't really change. There was no secret books or something like that found in there as well.
Bobby Conway.
Well, that was a tremendous explanation right there. And when it comes to those scrolls, I mean, that is what's so amazing. I mean, they were leveraging the Textus Receptus, which Erasmus was, leveraging. And when you think about the KJV, for example, that was put together, you think of the 17th century, and that used a set of manuscripts known as the text received or the Textus Receptus. But with the Dead Sea Scrolls, you ended up finding these scrolls that predated that set of manuscripts by 1,000 years. And when you were to compare and contrast, what was so amazing is just how careful the scribes really were in that whole process. So that's now, the critical text, and it is the manuscripts that give us the NASB or the ESV or the NIV or the New Living Translation. If you use any of those translations, those are translations that have benefited from the discovery that took place at Qumran at the Dead Sea. And then the King James and New King James, they use the Textus Receptus set of manuscripts. And this ends up with some textual variants that you'll see little footnotes on, like why is the end of Mark not in, the ESV, for example, and it is in the KJV because they're using a different set of manuscripts. So this can be really helpful. But what is astonishing is just the close overlap of the translation process.
Yes, indeed. Astonishing. Right, Chris?
Yes, thank you so much for that answer.
All right.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. And we have, how many seconds do we have left?
I like 30.
Okay, so older is better when it comes to manuscripts. So the older you find something back, closer to the source, so you can see any textual variants. So that's why the Dead Sea Scrolls was so exciting to people. This is 2,000 years old, and look how accurate it relates to our current translations today.
Nice. Okay, 888-564-6173 is our number. We are here for about another 30 minutes. Grab an open line. Ed Stetzer and Bobby Conway here to answer your questions at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. We are back on Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. I'm Brian Perez, and here in the studio with me, we've got the Dean of the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University.
Ta-da.
You can find out more at biola.edu. See, you did it that
you
time.
did. You lured me in with your foolishness. That's what you've done.
Thank you. Bobby Conway's here as well. He is the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's joining us online. He's also an author and an apologist. You can find out more about him on his website, ChristianityStillMakesSense.com. While you're there, you can pick up a copy of his book called Does Christianity Still Make Sense? And we're going to go back to the phones in a little bit, 888-564-6173. During the break, Ed and I were talking about something, and it reminded me that I've been meaning to ask him. I don't think I've asked him.
Oh.
How many languages do you speak?
I really just barely speak English.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mi español es muy mal. So, but do you speak, are you Latino?
Sí.
Okay, you speak Spanish?
Poquito.
Okay, poquito. Mi poquito es mismo.
Maybe your poquito and my poquito together would be...
make a full quito. I don't know. So no, and then American Sign Language, but that's been years. So in both cases, so I did training. I went to Puerto Rico in Viejo San Juan, and I took language school because I started a church in Spanish language about 30 years ago. But I could not engage a conversation today because I just haven't kept it up. I'd like to have kept it up. So yeah, and then a little sign language, same thing. I started a deaf church a couple decades ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to know if you knew any other languages was because I was going to have you give the phone number out in different languages.
I could do that. Ocho, ocho, ocho. No, I would just say 888-564-6173. I could do that in Spanish. 888-564-6173. I think I do phone number in Spanish. I could probably do it in Russian. I could probably, but we all count. I could do it in Greek. So surely, got to do some of those. But getting beyond phone numbers and where's the bathroom
Yes.
would be a little more challenging.
Those are the important ones.
Exactly.
888-564-6173, I think.
Sí, por favor. Please call now. And again, 888-564-6173 for the gringos who are listening.
Stacy in Anaheim, welcome to Pastor's Perspective. How can we help you?
Hi, thank you and bless you. Thank you for being such a blessing to the body of Christ. I've seen a lot of things lately on TV where there are televangelists casting demons out of people, sometimes even Christians. And I'm wondering, how do we know whether or not to rejoice that the demons are being cast out of the people, whether or not it may be staged? How would you know the difference between whether it's authentic or whether or not someone is really being delivered from demon oppression or demon possession?
Wow, great question.
That's a good question. And well asked, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I think Ed'll has some interesting stuff to share with just his missionary understanding of the world. But I will say that I do think a lot of it is fabricated. So on one hand, we have to be cautious of making, everything demonic. On the other hand, closing our eyes to the demonic, because our battle's not against flesh and blood, as Ephesians 6 says. If I was looking about the biblical data for something that would make me think that somebody was demonically possessed, and I don't know that I've ever bumped into somebody that I could say unqualified that this person was demon possessed. So I think we need to be very careful when we label somebody as demon possessed. That could be quite a brand to wear if we don't know for sure. Biblically speaking, what you could see is just some unbelievable supernatural strength. Like the demoniac breaking chains off of him. So I think that could be something. So, if you see an 85-year-old lady flip a car over, that might be something to pay attention to.
That might be a signal. That might be something to pay attention to.
That might be a signal. Knowing information that you would never know, could be demonic. So like if you're encountering strength, maybe some screeching information that it seems like this person, there's no way could know. It's possible you're in the presence. Then what do you do as far as exercising that? Because the danger is, this person has a demon of this and a demon of that and a demon of this. This is where it gets just really messy and murky. And I think that Jude gives us the great advice. We say, the Lord rebuke you. And so we don't take Satan on and start going, okay, well, what's your name, demon? And, start getting in a personal interaction with the demon. We look to the Lord to do the work there.
Ed?
So here's a fun fact that I learned when I came to the Biola University, Talbot School of Theology.
Biola.edu.
Stop. Ding. So Biola, as you probably know, like in the past, 50, 60 years ago, a lot of Christians like at Biola would be not, like in the space Biola would not talk a lot about demonic things or spiritual warfare. But Talbot had this weird connection. Not weird's the wrong term, but like Neil Anderson. You probably heard of Neil Anderson. Like super well known as he's bondage breaker, right? Talbot guy. So and so we've got a lot of like books and resources over the years that have been published by Talbot theology professors, and I love that. So for example, Clint Arnold has a real good book called Crucial Questions about Spiritual Warfare. And I think that in there he talks about how spiritual warfare and the idea of, demonic engagement is much more common in the Bible than we see today in the West, and it's still much more common around the world, So, so I do think that the warning of C.S. Lewis is probably helpful. That sometimes he would say there's kind of two ditches here. It's not his words, ditches on the side of the road are my words, but one is like an unhealthy obsession with these things. And I think that if you start seeing it on television with TV evangelists, that might be that category. But the other side it's kind of a ignoring of those things, and I think that's probably a bigger thing in a lot of the West. So I do think that, and I would say, I could tell when Stacy asked that question that Stacy's got some knowledge about this, because he used the word oppression, and he was kind of saying, what does it mean to be oppressed, or he used the word possession. So I'm of the view that that demonic possession is real. And I've had 2 encounters in 40, or how long have I been in ministry? Since 37 years of ministry. 2 encounters that I think a person was genuinely demonically possessed. And exorcism sometimes is a term you use, but casting out is there. But I would also say, Stacy, I've been a pastor since I was 21 years old, and I'm 58 next month. So 37 years, and 2 times in 37 years have I encountered something like this. And so I think it's rare. Now, I do think the idea of demonic oppression, where demonic forces do oppress God's people, among others, and non-Christians as well, is more common and real. And I think spiritual warfare is really a thing. I think, Frank Peretti's fiction book became a lot of people's go-to. I think fiction books are a bad idea to build your theology around. But I would recommend some of the resources I mentioned. For example, Clint Arnold's book on 3 questions about spiritual warfare. And The Bondage Breaker is one that I haven't read in a while. But it's part of the Bondage Breakage series. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was Ken Birding on our faculty who's recently written on, I'm going to look it up and I'll send it to you so we can add it to the Facebook page. You should always go to the Facebook page, because when you're there, you can actually see Bobby's hair as well. So we don't want to miss all of that. So
oh boy.
Yeah. Very good. Stacy, thank you for your phone call. 888-564-6173 is our number until 4 p.m. Pacific time, and then it won't be our number again until tomorrow, because you won't be able to call.
Oh,
the lines we usually block them out.
Do you really? You just shut them down. What do they get? A busy signal?
I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Or maybe it's a recording of you giving out the phone number.
Yeah, that's true. Just
That'd
over and over again.
Amanda in Glendora, California. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. It says here you're watching us on YouTube, so let's wave hi to Amanda. Welcome to the program. How can we help you?
Thank you. It's my husband and I calling in. We just had a baby, and we were talking last night about the verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, I think it is, that says, "Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer." But our question was in regards to postpartum and healing and psychologically getting back on track with an intimate lifestyle and caring for a baby, and if this applies strictly to intercourse or to other things as well.
Well, this could become, how do we have a PG answer? Because moms are driving with their kids.
We could tell moms for the next 5 minutes, maybe tune out the radio.
I think we can keep
but we'll do our best.
I think we can keep
do.
it like G, rated G. I think it's, let me just say, was it Joy?
That was Amanda.
Amanda, sorry. Amanda, it's like, I love the fact that you and your husband are calling and asking this question. I think, there's some things that we know, that after having a baby, doctors typically recommend that you take 4 to 6 weeks before you engage in intimate activities. I think we can say that.
46 weeks?
4 to 6 weeks. That was, okay. I think that's maybe what your wife said. I don't know. I think we're going to get complaints about that reference. But what I would say is that, God designed marriage for including intimate activities, and I think she's rightly saying, well, are there other ways to have that intimate activities? I would say to you, Amanda, that I've had 3 children. My kids are they're young adults now, but those months after having a child were some of the most difficult, and it's so complicated because it's not just, I'm guessing Amanda's making this call because she wants to do this, but there's the exhaustion that comes, and the baby's up all night, and his baby's sleeping through the night. And so what I would say is this is a great opportunity for husbands to exercise patient love and care, recognizing that there's just a lot on the wife. And also, it's an opportunity for the wife to say, I want to also, as soon as possible, and to find ways, and maybe even to say to the husband, I need you to, if you can help out with these things, it'll help me have the energy so we want to restore that intimate part of our relationship as well. But what I would say to you, Amanda, and husband, who I think they said they were both on the line, I don't know how you do that nowadays, by the way, because back in the old days, there'd be like we could literally be on the same phone, like on a different phone line. But what I would say to both of you, there's not one answer. And I just want to say the fact that you're asking this question shows that this is important to you, and you're going to have to find the time and the pattern and the rhythm that works for you to rebuild some of the intimacy that led to your current situation, and gives you that opportunity, because I think it sounds like you both value that. Bobby, what would you add?
Yeah, I think when it comes to intimacy, it might look a little bit different for various couples. And so I don't think any one particular spiritual leader can say this is the way it needs to be. And that's because there might be one couple, they're in a marital relationship, but that particular lady may have had all kinds of abuse in her background. And so she can't handle certain things that maybe another person that didn't have that could. And so I do just think that there's other ways that you guys could, practice intimacy without capital I intimacy. And so I think that could be something that you could just remember as well. I would say during that long wait, it is true. I mean, I think about Paul. I was like, man, that's some pretty serious fasting. I can't think of a time I was like, honey, we really just
rated G, rated G,
fast.
Rated G.
Yeah.
Keep it rated G.
Oh, I'm keeping it rated
Okay,
G.
good. Okay, fair.
It's better than G. It's I'm saying like why we fast, because in my brain you could figure out both, but if you did decide to go on a fast because you're trying to shrink, maybe you're getting too focused on something like that and you're fasting, you could see how Paul would say that, but he's like, hey, come back together, be intimate, and that's important so temptation doesn't kick in. I think what I would suggest is have open communication about how you're doing, and if you sense your husband is being honest, he's saying, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm struggling with a little bit of temptation just because it's been a while, then you know what, I think that there's something that you could help in that without capital I. And so if not, I would say
impressive.
then to him, he would just want to make sure that he protects himself from not allowing his thoughts to get off the rail, because you might just have to operate like you're single a little bit, because think about hey, those that long to be married that aren't, they have to wait for a real long time. Mm-hmm. The guy that just had a wife that had a baby, so he has to wait 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, at the end of the big deal. Like we should be able to have some control for a month to a month and a half when there's lots.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have a physical additional physical consequence, it can be longer. And so,
yeah.
But in general, what a great question. And I would say for anyone listening, husbands are going to have to exercise greater patience, and this would be an opportunity to serve your wife, and wives are going to be just at a very tiring time for husbands and wives. But of course, when you have the newest born baby, it's so reliant on the mom as well, and so to seek to find that, for her to strive towards that, and him to strive towards patience and intimate marriage relationships, and for her to strive towards, in the timing when it's right, for her the intimate relationship. I think that's a win for both of you. And the fact that you're asking that question together is a good and encouraging thing, Amanda. Thanks for your call.
Indeed. 888-564-6173 is our number for about 10 more minutes. Call us up, like John in Escondido, listening on KSDW, San Diego's home for worship and the word. Hi there, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
I have a question about that old story about Jacob wrestling with who? Who did Jacob wrestle with? Some say a god, some say an angel, some say a man. And I was curious that they all say man in the different versions, except the New King James, and they capitalize the word M. I mean, capitalize the word man in that version. So I was just kind of curious as to who did Jacob wrestle with? Who put Jacob's hip out of joint?
Okay, Bobby Conway.
It can be a bit cryptic. I think that the conclusion, where he says, I saw the face of the Lord. He wrestled with, God, basically. I'm not looking at the passage at the moment, but just kind of off recall. At the end of the story, you see he comes to this conclusion that who he wrestled with, it was the Almighty One. But whether or not it was Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, I just don't know. I find myself feeling like I'm speculating a bit there. And when you look in a translation, you're astute to do that. Sometimes you can see the translation committee making decisions that will show maybe which way they're leaning. If there's a lowercase, maybe that just goes to show, hey, they feel a little bit nebulous about whether this is a divine being. If it's capitalized, then it tips the hat toward, a belief that this was a divine encounter. I personally take this as, the angel of the Lord. The question then becomes, was the angel of the Lord Jesus incarnate?
Right, not incarnate.
I'm comfortable.
I know
with
what you
that.
mean, but not incarnate yet.
I mean, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Right. Pre-incarnation. Right. Pre-incarnate. Yeah.
Pre is an important word.
Yeah.
I do tend to feel comfortable with that, because then it's kind of like, well, then you got this fourth person of the Godhead, potentially the angel of the Lord. And I don't think you want to get into a quadrinity. Otherwise, you couldn't teach at Biola. So I think
back to where we started. That's true. We do not believe in a quadrinity here. So that is very true.
What do you think, Ed?
Yeah. So I do. It is an interesting, and it's a nice spotting of that as well, because the King James Version does not capitalize man, but the New King James Version does capitalize man. And other Bible translations, I mean, I don't like have in my head all the Bible translations, but I don't think they do. So they're making a statement about, and the translators are. And, translators they make choices like this all the time. And so they're making a statement that this being that wrestled with Jacob is either a theophany, which is, an appearance of God, or a Christophany, which is appearance of the pre-incarnate Christ, incarnation Christ in the Old Testament, and that's what I tend to think that it is. But that's their kind of making a statement there. But I do think that this is. There's a lot of ways the Lord sort of represents himself in the Old Testament. One time he walks by Moses and stuff like that. So he can and does manifest himself. Maybe manifest is not the best word, because there's all kinds of theological ramifications. But
plus, we're talking about the word man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good point there. There's that as well. So, but good, nice spot. Was it John? Nice spot in that, John. And I would say the translators are saying to you that this is a divine encounter, and whether it's a pre-incarnate Christ, or whether it's some expression of God, that's how they're recording it. This is not simply an angel.
Helpful, John?
I'm the same person that believes that oh shoot, now I forgot the name. The one that met Abraham.
Melchizedek.
Yeah.
Melchizedek. Yes, thank you. I believe that was a Christophany or possibly Jesus himself in the Old Testament.
Right. Well, a Christophany would be, we wouldn't use the word Jesus because Jesus is earthly name. So it'd be a Christophany by definition would be a pre-incarnate Christ. So, and Melchizedek, or for example, when was it Joshua encounters the captain of the army of the host of the Lord, and he worships him. I mean, there are these fascinating. I'd love to teach a Bible study on Christophanies. I would say to you, John, I think that's Melchizedek is that as well. So, but again, I'm not. It's these things are not super clear, but there's something. I mean, when they say Melchizedek, and they describe him as all the characteristics that he have, it sure sounds divine. And then Hebrews references this anyway. But John has opened up like a can of theological worms here. So what do you think? Right? Melchizedek, Christophany? What do you think?
See, with Melchizedek, I actually take Melchizedek as a literal, Melchizedek, king of righteousness. Yeah. He's the king of Salem. So there's a place. I know that it says because there's not a genealogy associated with him, that's caused some people to think, okay, this is, the eternal Christ in a pre-incarnate manifestation in the person of Melchizedek. But for me, I think it could be saying without genealogy, just, hey, they didn't have records of his genealogy, but he was a literal king in Salem, and so he's a type of Christ, and that's how Hebrews leverages it. That's how I would take that personage.
Yeah. So fascinating. And again, it's people. Either, I think Tripper Longman it talks about this relationship with Melchizedek and Jesus is that, some sort of Old Testament Christophany. But, and by the way, it uses the word that Melchizedek is Jesus. And, where I kind of like to see that as more of an earthly name. So if you think of Jesus Christ, he's fully God, fully man. But the Christophany, but certainly a close resemblance to Jesus and obviously deeply connected to Jesus. But super, John, good job reading your Bible closely.
Yeah, and I think with this stuff too, just being really gracious with each other on these, interpretive lands that we make. So with the sons of God and daughters of men, if you come up and say, okay, I think these are the fallen angels, or if you say this is, the sons and daughters of the line of Seth, I think we should be gracious on some of this stuff because we are struggling to get at what's going on here. I think the thing that, take, for example, the sons of God and daughters of men of Genesis 6, 1-8, what's really cool about that passage is Moses is writing that from a place of such assumption that he doesn't even provide any explanatory, detail for his audience. It's as if, you clearly know who the sons of God and daughters of men are. But because we're so far removed, we get stuck in these positions where we're struggling to make sense of things. So we can leverage First Enoch to kind of get some more detail on the nature of that account. But sometimes that's what's really cool. You can know that it's still inerrant, still part of the God's revealed word, but sometimes we just don't know. So you take the baptism for the dead in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Well, there's no explanation what's going on there, and we're left with over hundreds of interpretations on what do we do with this cryptic passage. But it's as if Paul didn't even need to explain it because the original audience would have known. And I think we get so far away from some things that apart from any extra archaeological stuff, we're kind of at a loss at times, but we trust anyway that if we have more context, it would make sense.
Yeah, and I think it's John seems to be a fan of Christophanies, and so I think that all of them aren't sure. But some of the things that people talk about, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire, and then there's this fourth person, and it actually says that someone as if the fourth looks like a son of the gods, and so we see those things, and there's never been a time when God has not existed as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and God has always been at work as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it might not be shocking to us to see the Spirit hovering over the waters in Genesis, but also to see the pre-incarnate Christ at work in the world in ways that are surprising and sometimes mysterious because the clarity of who he was wouldn't come fully until the prophecies were fulfilled as well. John, super Bible reader, super call. Thanks for taking the time.
Do you think you will teach that class on Christophanies at Mariners Church someday?
I think I sort of this may inspire me a little bit. I'm teaching this fall on Wednesday nights a series on Christians at our best in the age of outrage. How do we kind of navigate this crazy season?
I read a book about that.
It is true. So there's a companion Bible study that goes with the book Christians in the Age of Outrage called Christians at Our Best. So I'm trying to teach there every Wednesday night. I'll be kind of walking through how do we navigate these wacky times we're living in for Jesus.
Nice. Wednesdays at Mariners Church beginning in the fall.
Can we say Mariners? Because Calvary Chapel, we're like sister churches, but this is a Calvary Chapel radio program.
Yeah, we just did.
We're all this.
Can't take it back now. It's live radio.
We're in this together.
We're
in this together. Gospel stuff.
That's right. We are out of time, folks. Sorry if we couldn't get to all of your calls today. Please call us back tomorrow. We will be here between 3 and 4 p.m. Pacific time. Today's episode will be archived on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify a little bit later. You can find out more about Biola University at biola.edu, and join us again. Wait a minute, biola.edu, biola.ed, Stetzer U.
Wow.
The new name of Biola University, Ed Stetzer U. Anyway, Pastor's Perspective was sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America.